She thought it would be fine to take my boat for a quick ride without asking for permission. But when I found out, I made sure she'd never forget her little mistake. The outcome? She had to explain herself to the authorities, and it wasn't pleasant for her. Living by the water was a dream come true for me. After working for years as a Marine officer, I was used to being at sea. So, I wanted a quiet place to unwind when I wasn't working. I was lucky enough to find a house in a secure neighborhood with a private dock where I kept my pride and joy, my boat. It was brand new, loaded with all the gear I needed for fishing trips. But of course there was an issue. My neighborhood had a woman who acted like she owned the place. Ever since she moved in, she couldn't stop nitpicking things that didn't concern her. First, she complained that boats like mine didn't fit in with the neighborhood's appearance. Then, she started saying I shouldn't have the privilege of a private dock. I could tell she was just upset that she didn't have one herself. At first, I ignored her. I've dealt with people like her before, and I knew the best way to handle it was to stay quiet. But people like her don't stop when you don't react, and that's exactly what she did. One weekend morning, I woke up early, ready to check on my boat and get it ready for a trip out on the water. But when I got to the dock, I felt that uneasy feeling, the kind you get when you know something's not right. My boat was gone. I stood there, blinking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My first thought was that someone had moved it by mistake, maybe the neighborhood management. But then, I noticed the ropes had been cut. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had taken my boat. Most people would panic in that situation, but not me. I'm a Marine officer. I've seen how dangerous the sea can be, especially for people who don't know what they're doing. And I started wondering, who would be reckless enough to steal a boat from a Marine officer? That's when I heard my neighbor, Mr. Reed, shout from his yard. "Hey, I thought you let that lady from the board borrow your boat. I saw her leaving with it earlier." I froze. Which lady? The one from the greenhouse. Anger surged through me. She had taken my boat, and now I was going to make sure she understood the consequences. I needed to act fast. The sea isn't forgiving. And if this woman had taken my boat without knowing how to operate it, she was putting herself at serious risk. Not that I cared about her safety, but I sure didn't want any emergencies connected to me. I pulled out my phone and checked the boat's GPS tracker. Of course, my boat had one. It wasn't just a luxury item. It had top-tier tech. Within moments, the map showed its exact location, and there it was, drifting further away from the shore. I couldn't help but curse. Not only had she stolen my boat, but she also had no clue how to handle it. I jumped in my truck and headed straight to the Coast Guard station. If she thought she was going to cause trouble, she was about to get a dose of reality. When I got there, I went straight to my colleagues. I explained the situation, and of course, one of them burst out laughing. "You're telling me that your neighbor from the board took your boat and is out there on the water?" "That's right, and it's about to get good." We quickly got organized. Luckily, I was in charge of the operation. If anyone else had been on duty, she would have been treated like a criminal right away. But I wanted to handle this differently. We boarded the patrol boat and headed in the direction of the tracker's signal. As we got closer, it became clear just how clueless she was. First off, she was alone in the middle of the water. Second, she had no idea how to steer the boat. It was spinning in circles, drifting farther and farther from land. And from a distance, we could hear her screaming. We tuned into her radio frequency and tried to reach her. I tried to keep a straight face as I picked up the mic. "This is the Coast Guard. Please identify yourself immediately." On the other end, all we heard was panic. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Please help! I'm lost. The boat's broken." That was a lie. The boat wasn't broken. She simply didn't know how to drive it. When we reached her, it was a sight to behold. She was sweating, her hair a mess, clutching the wheel like it was about to explode. And when she saw me, her face turned pale. That's when she realized how badly she'd messed up. As we got closer, her desperation was obvious. All that arrogance she had before was completely gone. Now, she was just a nervous wreck floating out in the middle of nowhere. The patrol boat slowed down, and we stopped next to her. Before I could say anything, she screamed, "Help me! The boat's broken. It won't go back." It was all I could do to keep from laughing. I signaled to my team to stay quiet and approach her calmly. Over the radio, I spoke as if this was just another rescue. This is the Coast Guard. You're operating a vessel that isn't yours. Do you understand that? She blinked at me, struggling to speak. I just borrowed it. It was just a quick ride. I couldn't help myself. I chuckled dryly. You borrowed it? That's funny. Normally, when you borrow something, you don't cut the ropes and sneak off in the middle of the night. Her face flushed, but she tried to salvage her dignity. I was going to bring it back. I wasn't stealing it. One of my colleagues snickered into the radio. I kept my serious tone. You're operating a boat without the owner's permission, in open water, without the right equipment or the skills to drive it. Do you know what that's called? She was silent. Illegal possession and operation of a vessel. She blinked rapidly, her mind clearly racing to find an escape. No, this is crazy. I'm a good person. You can't treat me like this. Ah, yes. The I'm a good person excuse. It's always a fun one to hear when someone gets caught. Well, we're boarding your boat now. Keep your hands visible and cooperate. She realized then that she was trapped. There was no way out, and things were only going to get worse for her. We carefully escorted her back to shore. Her silence was almost comedic. The woman who thought she could get away with anything was now sitting on my boat, looking like a helpless kitten. Meanwhile, one of my team members steered her boat back, effortlessly maneuvering it as she stared at the situation she'd gotten herself into. When we docked, an officer was already waiting to take her statement. She seemed to snap out of her daze and cried, "You can't arrest me. This will ruin my life." I wanted to say, maybe you should have thought about that before stealing my boat, but I kept quiet. The officer took over and explained things to her. You're not under arrest, but you'll need to make a statement, and the boat's owner can file a formal complaint. She turned to me with wide eyes. You're really going to do that? You mean file the complaint? Absolutely. She tried everything to avoid it. First, she sent messages begging me to let it go. Then, she tried involving the neighborhood association, pressuring me to drop it. Finally, when that didn't work, she offered me money to make things right. But by then, I wasn't interested in money. It was about justice. The case went to court, and, predictably, she lost. She had to pay for the boat's damages, cover legal fees, and, to top it off, she was banned from my property and any future access to my boat. But the real punishment came when the story spread through the neighborhood. Her reputation, which she tried so hard to protect, was ruined. No one wanted to be associated with her. Eventually, she put her house up for sale and left without a word, her exit as silent as her arrival. As for me, life went on. My boat remained safe, now with extra security measures in place, though I doubt anyone else would dare to touch it. In the end, I learned that sometimes people need a reality check to understand that the world doesn't revolve around them. And in this case, that check came in the form of a Coast Guard boat and a legal battle. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment and a like.